Welcome everyone to the late game, episode 34. My name is Lycan, and with me I have the ever handsome co-host iNcontroL, and with us our first guest, Kane. We're here to talk about a whole bunch of stuff. WCS qualifiers still going on. We've also had Home Story Cup come and go. We'll have a discussion about what went on at Home Story Cup, because we have some people that were actually there this time. We'll talk about DreamHack coming to North America, possible 2 DreamHacks in North America, second one being teased, first one being announced, which is DreamHack Austin. We'll get a little more in-depth about the maps than we did last week. We'll talk about the fall of Shoutcraft Clan Wars and just the general tone of North America and Europe when it comes to keeping deadlines and participating with commitments that they've made. We'll talk about the S2SL walkover of Rain, and then we'll wrap it up with your questions. But first of all, let's start with our guest, Kane. How you doing, buddy?
I'm doing good. Just got back from Vancouver yesterday just to visit some family. So kind of getting caught up on my sleep schedule. And yeah, I played some games today and yesterday, so I've been practicing a bit and just taking it easy. It's a nice summer so far, so.
Good. What were you doing in Vancouver?
Visiting some family. My grandpa lives there, so my mom and I went to visit him.
Cool. So I got the chance to go to Canada other than Niagara Falls for the first time. It was Toronto. What's Vancouver like?
It's similar to Toronto. The weather is a bit better usually. During the summer and fall, it's a bit more rainy, but it's pretty similar to Toronto. There's nicer views just because it is on like the coast, so you do get that beautiful ocean breeze and the nice views and stuff. So
Nice. Nice. Well, glad to have you here. Jeff, how you doing, man?
Good.
You just
Good,
had a
good.
lot of traveling, right?
Yeah, I was in Austin, Texas for half a week, and then I was in Toronto, and then I was in Germany.
Was Austin a Warhammer thing?
Yeah.
Did you get your new figure?
It is ordered and on the way, but it is not here yet.
How big is this one?
This is the biggest. It's 22 and a half inches tall or something like that, and it weighs close to 50 pounds.
Nice. What's the name of it?
It's called the Warlord Titan.
The what?
Warlord Titan.
Warlord Titan. I need to see this.
Yeah,
Okay,
it's a new model.
That's pretty big. Kind of looks like that April Fool's joke from StarCraft, where they put all the machines for the Terran together, like the different buildings, and it made that giant mechanical thing with the buzzsaw. So if you guys want to Google that, that's Warlord Titan. I still know nothing about Warhammer 40k yet. But is it also a role... Well, is this technically a role-playing game, or what kind of game is it?
Tabletop is the kind of genre, but it's very close to playing a game of, real-time strategy, like a StarCraft game or something like that, just with models and fixed points.
Okay, cool. All right, well, we're going to go ahead and just kick off the show right now. Zombie Grub and Riff Zombie Grub, pretty much for sure, Rifkin, if he's feeling up to it, will join us after they're doing the qualifiers. Right now, they're over casting. I think they've been following DeMuslim. DeMuslim knocked out Bling, and he's pretty upset about it. Before we actually go to the scheduled topics, if you guys want to check them out, they're doing DeMuslim's Zanster right now. But before we talk scheduled topics, Jeff, let's talk about Protoss and Terran, right? A lot of.
Did you put us on Team Liquid, by the way?
I did not.
You did not.
I did not.
That'll be 100 push-ups later, Lycan. 100.
Well, I needed some reason to work out today. I mean, I have reasons. I just haven't motivated myself, but I'll listen to you, Jeff.
There you go.
It.
That's what this is for.
Booyakasha. But TVP, a lot of people have been complaining from the Protoss side. And,
God.
And I feel that, that they may have forgotten just how unforgiving TVP has been the past year up until recently. So I'm curious, is it a well-balanced matchup? Are they just not used to having to deal with Terran the way they are now? What's going on with the mentality?
When you say Protoss are whining, what do you mean? Are you following a lot of European Protosses on Twitter? Is that what's happening here?
Yes.
Okay, well, Lycan, I think it's absolutely adorable, and we'll continue to follow the specimen that is Lycan, but, pro gamers whine, man. And they're always going to whine. If there's ever a constant in StarCraft, it's that. I mean, back in Brood War, Artosis was one of the whiniest guys I ever met in my entire life, and here he is 15 years later doing the same thing, so it's just going to be one of those things. But as far as the matchup's concerned, to talk about it, I think I want to say PvT is one of the most stable matchups in the game as far as the swings that it experiences based on maybe a patch, which is obviously very infrequent with StarCraft 2 right now in terms of Heart of the Swarm,
Mm-hmm.
but more so maps is it's pretty like yeah, there's some maps where it's like Jesus Christ, it's impossible to take a third here, and if you do, they pick up their entire army and go into your main, and like that's a super common Protoss problem. Terrans also kind of shook up the meta a little bit with the skipping a Viking style that Maru kind of introduced, and some people have been emulating. Even if you're facing Colossus, just keep dropping, keep counterattacking, expand, and eventually just run them over and make Vikings as a last measure if you have to.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know. Without numbers to back it up, like maybe someone's like, Jeff, right now in Pro League, it's an 85% Protoss win rate. It's like, okay, well, even then, a lot of times that's more like the Protoss are hitting their swing, or they've discovered something that changed the build order meta a little bit.
Right.
It's a very like, well, anything that's like, anytime you ask me XVP, it's very like build order and map oriented, where it's like the Protoss figured out something that cuts a corner. It's not actually that amazingly good. It's just everybody else hasn't adjusted to it yet. So I'm speaking pretty extremely in generalities here, but what I would tell you is that PvT is, I don't know, completely fine and great. I don't think there's any reason to throw up our arms and be upset.
Okay. I do have one question about Protoss in general. Would you say that that's the race that drives the meta the most?
Absolutely. I'd be very surprised if anyone said otherwise. Like, every time there's a really shitty map, it's because Protoss force fields break it, Protoss cannon rushes break it, or conversely, and just as extreme, Protoss can't take a third there, so they have to all in. Like, it's always it's 95% of the time Protoss driven. Because when it's bad for a Zerg, it's so hideously bad that that map could never be taken seriously. Like, the few times they've been like, what about a gasless third? And the Zerg's like, well, what in the fuck are we, like, and they just, the map just is out of circulation very, very quick. Or they're like, well, the natural's really hard to take, like, way back in the day.
Mm-hmm.
I think this is before both your guys' time, but man, back in Wings Liberty, there were some maps where, like, you actually had to pack a backpack. You had to pack a sack lunch to get to your natural. And these poor fucking Zerg players were like, they're like one base roach rushing. And this is, back in the Wild West where that would sometimes work, but now, never. So, and then Terran, of course, is completely fine with just about every map.
Yep. Yeah. Okay. Let's jump to the WCS qualifiers. First, we'll kick it off with North America. So far qualified, I think the last qualifier we're missing is the last chance qualifier. So right now we have Bales, Neeb, Hitman, QXC, Semper, and Jon Snow. Any names there that stick out to you as, someone you didn't expect to see, Jeff?
Yeah, I was talking with the guys, I think it was at Homestory Cup, but Neeb, I believe, played Terran and Protoss. He's been a long-term young Terran player that has popped up and down in the WCS NA scene, but not deep runs, but for how young he is, he's come close to, well, he has qualified a couple times, I believe, but then done okay for himself. So that was a surprising name to see, just because I also haven't heard from him in forever, which is, it's probably more to do with this being the WCS era, where if you're not qualified and making deep runs for WCS, there's a very good chance we'll never hear from you, because it's more likely that we hear from you there, which is a daily broadcast, as opposed to you randomly taking top 5 at a DreamHack or IEM, right? Like, that's just not going to happen. So without an MLG in the scene, this is where we hear about people, and he just kind of popped up and qualified and did really well while doing it, so it's pretty awesome.
Yeah. Kane, a lot of these guys are your ladder mates. Anyone here you didn't expect to see, or any you're kind of like, okay, finally, you saw potential in them?
Yeah, the two names that stick out to me are Semper and Neeb, just because I saw Neeb playing Protoss on ladder, and I thought it was somebody else on his account because he was actually really good. And he did beat me a couple times as Protoss, so I was pretty sure it was an off race, but then I saw him qualify as Protoss here. So it was kind of like, holy shit, this guy can actually play Terran and Protoss really well. So that was really cool to see. The other guy is Semper. I really don't know much about him, even though he is Canadian. I know he qualified for the Hell It's About Time...
a boot!
A boot.
Come on! Come on!
That base trade's putting on. So, I mean, this guy seems to be pretty consistent. He could be like an up-and-coming Canadian, because God knows we need another one. The other guy being probably no regret, but he just cheeses all the time. So I'm hopeful that Semper can kind of come through. And yeah, gay guy was pretty funny to watch. That was hilarious. I mean, the name itself is just like the best. So
It kind of opens you up to making all the jokes that you couldn't make without being called a bigot, but now it's just like, well, that's his name. I'm not,
yeah.
trying to be an ass.
And then all of the other guys, I kind of like. I expected Huck and Puck to qualify probably on the first or second qualifier, so I'm a bit surprised that they haven't. But going to the fourth qualifier, I'd be really surprised if they didn't qualify because they're two players that definitely should be in WCS.
Absolutely. Jeff, do you think that there's something, it's just, Huck's been busy, there's been casting, he's been doing a lot of travel. Do you think that's really the only reason he didn't make it one of the earlier qualifiers this week?
Well, I know, yeah. It was the two qualifier. The first two were, I think, one was impossible for him to play at because he was traveling, and the second one, he played from Home Story Cup, but it started at midnight their time.
Ooh.
And it's European to North American server, which is unreliable at best. So those are the excuses, and I think they're pretty damn good in his case. It's not You're not going to hear any controversy here about how like Huck's been vacationing to the Bahamas with a cadre of women or something like that. Like he's casting, he's working, he's still a full-time pro gamer, and when he's in shape and able in his environment, he's one of the best.
Yep. I think we have one more qualifier left. It's just the last chance. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's not called the last chance though in America. It's just like a normal qualifier.
Oh, are there going to be 2 spots in it?
Yeah, 2 spots.
Okay, well then I hope that we see Huck and Puck at either end of the bracket.
Wait. Am I wrong? Is it just one spot? Because, yeah, I think because Hydra won and he was part of WCS America, he automatically qualifies for Premier, I think. So there's only going to be 7, I believe.
And there were 6 already, so, I mean, maybe that is going to be a single qualifier.
I think so, yeah. I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure that's how it works.
I mean, both of them have made deep runs in the brackets, this week, so we'll probably see a Puck v. Huck in the finals for tomorrow's. I think it's tomorrow? No, Friday, I think. It's the date of the qualifier.
I think it's Friday.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, there we go.
Or no, Thursday?
Yep.
Yeah, it's tomorrow,
yeah.
1 hour from now. Yeah.
Yep. 25 hours.
25 hours! I did that math really quick.
All right, moving on to EU. Current qualifiers are Showtime, Wellmoon, Naniwa, Happy You, Thermal, Sort of, Blind Nurtrio. Okay, apparently I forgot to tune in and check the results the next day because I didn't know Naniwa had made it through. But anyone there not familiar to you as far as the challengers, Kane? I think the only real names that I'm like, I don't know how often they've made it to challenger are Sort of, Blind, Nurtrio.
Yeah, Sort of is the one that kind of sticks out there, but he's always been pretty good, and all the other guys I expected to qualify. Wellmu beat Petit Drogo 2-1, and I did not expect that. I thought that Petit Drogo would qualify, but yeah, every other name, and I guess Happy should have beaten Sort of, but he didn't. Every other name is kind of normal to be in there. Like the qualifiers are pretty much going as I would expect, I think.
Okay. Is there anyone that has made it into this year's or this season's challenger that you're thinking, shit, I hope we don't meet him in Premier?
Probably Happy, and let me think. Happy and Showtime, because Showtime beat me in season 1. Those are the 2 that scare me the most right now.
Showtime's good.
Yeah, Showtime is super, super strong. He's like one of those European Protoss that epitomize like dirty Protoss turtling, and he does it so well.
What about Happy? What is he just aggressive play you don't like, or
he's just like a turtle mech player, and that's really hard right now to beat because swarm hosts are kind of not as useful. I don't want to say useful, but they're useless, but they're not as useful.
They're very
as
different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think it's still being figured out how to use them properly and like what number to make and kind of when to make them. So I think turtle mech play will be something that kind of changes over the next couple months anyways, so we'll see.
We saw him used once or twice at WCS, right guys? Sniping the Nexus. I don't remember any I don't remember too many games other than that Nexus snipe.
Yeah,
That's going to be their role. They're like mobile harass now, which is very different from what they were.
Yeah, and that map is a great position for it. I mean, it's no longer in the map pool, but I like that
Yeah,
strategy.
it's Bonnie Research Station. But
Yeah.
yeah, there's all kinds of maps where you can snipe a Nexus. It's just 5 swarm hosts, but I think it's interesting because what Kane brings up is like Turtle Mech is really, really strong, especially on a few of these maps with such narrow pathways. Like it's super
Mhm.
easy to clog it up. But what's funny to me is that the answer for this, as far as I'm concerned, is a very strong answer. And Legacy of the Void is the Viper like pseudo irradiate. I actually still don't. Or what is it called? Something spore bomb or something.
The,
Anyways,
parasitic bomb.
parasite bomb. That is so powerful against like a Raven Cloud. It's going to be devastatingly powerful, and it will dominate the air. And that's going to be able to break up a lot of that turtle mech. But then in Heart of the Swarm, with the Swarm host change, they don't really have a good answer at all. Like every time you see the game where the Terran gets it to the like 5-6 base locked up heavy mech style, and they have 20 Ravens. I have like little heartaches for the Zerg where I'm like, what do they do? What do they do to this? Because I have no idea what they're supposed to do other than get like a lucky fungal on all the Ravens, which is just that. It's just pure luck. Like it should never happen, and if it does, then the Terran's screwed. But
Yep.
that's rough, and that's what Happy plays to. I guess all the Europeans were complaining about that at Homestrike Cup. They said that if you play him, the only advantage you have is you know exactly what he's going to try to do, so you just hard counter the fuck out of it. But
Yeah, I'm curious to see how this continues to evolve, what we're going to see in TVZ as the season goes along, because while a lot of people have come out and said, hey, it's easy to abuse mech right now with the swarm host change, we still see a lot of people going for bio. Mech is definitely making more of an appearance, but people change it up. They'll do 1 series mech, 2 bio, 2 mech, 1 bio, things like that. And I assume that's map dictating a lot of those decisions for those people.
map, but also play style. Like if a guy only goes mech, it's not like it's easy to play against, but it's a lot easier. To overcompensate in the early game in terms of like expanding more heavily than you normally would, and then trying to stop them from getting to that late game, if not altogether, then at least intact.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why we saw Zanster do a really cool styles all over Homestrike Cup, where he almost, I want to say he didn't, if he made a hive, it was for upgrades, but he basically was just doing drop heavy roach burrow, really aggressive stuff, and he was actually dropping roaches in the mech main, which is something that I think is very much so underutilized. But it was really cool to see his style. He just never stopped attacking.
Yep.
Just a side note, Zanster is in the final of the WCS qualifier right now. So it looks like he's against Denver, and he might qualify.
Denver?
Denver, yeah. Like Punchline Denver. He's a French player.
Huh.
Wait, are there, did I not refresh that? You say Cyril?
No. Zanster
Oh,
versus Denver.
Zanster, okay.
Cyril is in the final too.
How many are you qualifying today? 4?
4.
Okay, alright. That's fine.
Wow.
Alright, is there anyone that you don't expect, or that you do expect to make it through today, Kane, looking at that?
Well, the finals are like pretty much determined at this point. I expect Cyril, Zanster, probably Jonah, and Hero Marine.
Okay. Well, I guess we'll probably see this by the end of the show, what happens and who goes through. What were we talking about? We were just talking about Zerg, Terran, and WCS, and stuff and things. I'll come
Very
back
good.
to it. There was something I wanted to ask about maps, but let's talk about maps. We'll talk about new maps. So that's your WCS qualifiers so far. We're still waiting on the EU, and then tomorrow we'll have the final. North American qualifier. I believe that in the other regions, who do we have? Let me open those up real quick. We have qualifying. Major and Kelazor have qualified, I think.
Expected.
Yeah.
From there, yeah.
From SEA, did Petraeus already qualify?
Yeah, Patrice and Blisk, I think.
Yes. Did you guys read that My Insanity write-up?
I read part
No.
of it.
I saw the picture.
So I'm reading it, and I'm like, he said there was like a really condescending, and it wasn't like just outright condescending, but it was pretty like, whoa, really? I don't know, really crappy comment about about foreigners or something like that. And I remember thinking, oh, this guy's a dick. Who wrote this? And it wasn't until I went back later to reread the article that I saw the comments. They're like, oh, was this e-sex? Ha ha ha. So I didn't realize that was a joke at first.
Oh.
Yeah, but that's typical, right? And so anyway, let's move on to the maps. You guys have had a chance to play the maps, the new map pool. We have a few crazy maps. We'll start with the ones you guys like least. Kane.
As a Zerg, I don't like Dash and Terminal. I've played quite a few games on it, but probably not enough to really warrant my dislike for it. But it just seems pretty gimmicky at this point. Like the gold base, the Terran can do the float to the gold right away. And ZVP, it seems kind of strong for the Zerg. Like I like it for that reason, but I don't know if it's a good idea just because you can attack from like 3 or 4 different angles, just the natural. So yeah, like you can break down the rocks, you can attack from the front, and you can go around that gap. So that kind of sucks for Protoss. And then Bridgehead seems good for Zerg as well, even though I have a really low win rate on it right now. It just because everybody's been like cheesing, but if I play safe, I think that it'll be really good for Zerg. So other than that, maps seem pretty good. Moonlight Madness is a bit tough to call right now. Seems pretty fine though. Terraform is like the most standard map. So yeah, Bridgehead and Dash and Terminal are my 2 question marks right now.
All right, Jeff. Starting with your least favorite, what are you thinking about the maps?
I'm trying to give him a little bit more time. I just got back from Home Story Cup, so this is my time playing on it. But after watching the entire tournament on these new maps, I think one thing that is kind of cool is they do change up the play style a little bit. Like you're seeing a little bit more variety in the gameplay. I think in particular than the last season of maps, where they were pretty like the exact same maps were always vetoed, and every single game series started with Coda basically, and it was either going to be anyways. I think they're pretty good. I am just kind of constantly on my soapbox that I think gold bases are always just pretty bad. There's been very few maps that have done them correctly. If you watch SPL and GSL and even the foreigner leagues and stuff like that, it just looks so ridiculous when the Zerg hatch first at a base that is literally across the map, right outside their opponent's base, and almost always it is a winning strategy. And if it's not, it's because the Protoss once again pulled the wool over the eyes of the Zerg or something like that and did something tricky. But I've seen everything from Void Ray rush to that base, 4 gates, 1 base 4 gate, like anything, and that all plays into the hands of what a gold base does, which is give a huge spike of resources early on to that Zerg. And it's funny because there's a lot of people I think there's very casual fans that find it really interesting. And I was sitting next to a guy who works for Blizzard at WCS, and he's like, "Oh, right." He's like, "This makes the game so exciting." And I just looked at him, and I'm like, "What?" It's the same thing every time, and it's like, I guess if you know what's happening, I don't know, you might find it interesting for different reasons, but it's like what's interesting about it is how can the Protoss survive this and try to win the game. That's interesting, I suppose, but it's not. And it's not so broken that it's like impossibly bad for the game. It's really not. But I don't think you'll ever see a Zerg who will tell you it's balanced and fair. And I know you won't find a Protoss. Protoss whine a lot, so it's that doesn't seem to be as compelling to me. But so yeah, that's my soapbox.
All right, what do you think about the Dash and Terminal Protoss versus Terran in the Mothership Core? I saw a really interesting thing during the qualifier the other day. QXC who built a bunker right away, right? Built a bunker on where the path would be for the Mothership Core to come in and attack the SCVs. You get that little extra range, you get that protection, and then you just salvage the bunker, 25 minerals, and you're good to go. But I mean, I don't really see any way that could be a bad thing. Do you, having to do that every game?
I don't know what you're referencing.
This map. 1 second. I'll link it in the game chat, or I'm sorry, the in the Twitch chat.
You link it.
Why the Twitch chat?
Because if I go to link it in Skype, then I have to I have to show you. Oh, here, I'll just do that. Hold
No, it's fine. I can see it. It's just funny. Dash terminal. I think Dash Joe is pretty okay. It's interesting. Um, Again, that gold-based thing that Kane was talking about where the Terran just floats over to it's pretty silly, but
Do you think that the it's a little open though? So we had the overgrowth was no habitation station where it used to have that gold boost that everyone would float over to. They could wall in and they could ramp up and do a quick early attack for the Terran. Do you think that on this map it's a little more open in some way? I understand that there's the imbalance of gold for certain races, but do you think that it being that open kind of mitigates us seeing that kind of same play where almost everyone is floating over?
no, because that's the problem with gold bases is that you want to be like, well, I'm going to punish that and attack them, but that is exactly what the gold base owner kind of wants you to do. And in fact, that's one of the only ways you can beat a guy that takes a gold base is that all of a sudden they're like, okay, now they're going to 4-gate or rush me, and then they like make a bunch of tier 1 units when lo and behold, you fucking rolled the dice and were like, no, I'm going to hope that they plan on me doing an early attack, but instead I'm going to play to the late game and just have them, waste a timing attack at a force-fielded ramp, or in the case of a Zerg or Terran, like, a walled-in bunker or just a defensive Zerg or something like that. But, well, I guess Zerg don't really care about gold. I mean, ZVT, I guess they do. They do a lot of, like, 2 or 3 racks, just all-out aggression. So if they can survive that, they're in pretty good shape. But it's a pretty big if, I guess. And then they pull the SCVs. It makes for such interesting games.
All right. So I guess that's it. Any final thoughts on that? Here's one question for you, Kane. Do you think it's obvious they tried to do something different? They tried to give us something a little more new and exciting. Do you think they did it too much?
Well, okay, I got a chance to speak with like David Kim at WCS, and I know that one of his goals of the new map pool, and what they were kind of hoping to do was to, instead of balancing the game out using like swarm hosts and new units and balancing that way, they were trying to like balance using the maps. And so that's why you see so many like gold bases on these maps, is because it really favors Zerg. So yeah, like I think that they didn't do it too much, but I don't know if I agree with balancing the game on the maps, especially using gold bases, because I kind of agree with Jeff. I think they're pretty stupid sometimes, especially like watching the Terran float over to the gold. It just seems like very un-StarCrafty a little bit, Like I don't know if that's how Blizzard should be balancing right now. So that's kind of unfortunate, but I think that it'll work as intended. I just don't know if it'll be interesting enough. I don't know if that's how people want to watch StarCraft.
Jeff, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, that's been a long time thing where they've had, and I say they because it's been a spectrum of people. Actually, it's never really been like one person over the course of the 17 years of StarCraft. But a lot of times they've been balancing towards maps, and in like a period of time where the certain meta is favoring one race or the other, maps will come out that de-emphasize the favored one and emphasize the others. And it's not the worst thing in the world. I would never tell you the sky is falling because of that, because there is logic to that, and I agree with Kane. It's it's like, okay, that does have an effect, but I think StarCraft people in general are most interested in a game that is as close as 3 asymmetrical races could ever possibly be in terms of balance, competing in a fair arena, again, as best as you possibly can. Like, this is the impossible task, but I'm far and away more interested in a Protoss versus a Zerg, or a Terran versus a Zerg, or whatever, in a game where it's very close in balance and they're on a map that doesn't favor one over the other too heavily. That, to me, is more interesting than, okay, they're on this map. Well, this is a Zerg map, so let's see how that Terran can survive.
Right.
And that's, again, as I say that, there are games that have it worse, right? Like, because that still is relatively interesting, and we've never had a StarCraft, well, we've had it, but for very brief periods of time, where it's, like, so out of balance that it's like, ha-ha! Oh my god, the Zerg did survive! Whoa! Like, it's not quite that bad, but it is definitely at a point where it's like, yep, the Terran floated over there, they took the gold, and now the Zerg is going to have to chase its own tail for the next 10 minutes, thinking whether or not it's going to get stem pushed all in, or, if it's an actual standard game just with a gold base. Like, it's it becomes a little bit more RNG, and I think StarCraft people will always be hesitant to embrace that.
Yeah, it sounds like there has to be a certain balance. Like, for instance, a lot of the way that they mitigated the strength of the Blink All In was through map balancing. They made less maps that could, favor the Protoss doing those strategies. So I guess my question is, do you feel that there is a slight need for those map tweaks to take into consideration the style of gameplay currently in the meta?
Is there a need for it, that we asked?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. I guess maybe I missed that part in your response earlier.
Yes.
Next topic. Moving on. All right, let's talk about DreamHack coming to North America. I mean, the details are scarce. It was teased by one of the DreamHack admins that StarCraft is going to be coming to North America, but it's going to be going to Austin. Has there been a StarCraft event in Austin before?
In Austin? Yeah, there's been...
Lone Star.
Yeah.
Is that Lone Star Clash? Have all of them been in Austin?
I believe so, yeah.
I think so, yeah.
All right, cool. So, I mean, I guess the only question is, are you guys excited to have North American StarCraft again? That's a non-WCS event.
We had IM San Jose last year, and I believe the same is going to happen this year, but are we excited for DreamHack to branch out to North America? Absolutely. I'm sure everyone is. DreamHack puts on an amazing show, and you'd have to be pretty silly to not want more StarCraft.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Jeff, did you get to go to IEM San Jose?
I can't remember what I was doing, but no, I was not able to go to that. It was some other thing I had to do. I can't remember what it was.
I can't remember if it was an open. Kane, did you go to that one?
Which one was it, sorry?
San Jose?
I didn't go to that one, but they did have it like I think they had a open bracket, maybe. I don't know.
Okay. So, I mean, for those of you who don't follow the Reddit religiously, today DreamHack announced that they are bringing a North American tournament. It's going to be in Austin, Texas. There's also teasing that DreamHack wants to do a second one in a different part of North America. Not sure where that would be. Maybe DreamHack New York, DreamHack Los Angeles, DreamHack Miami. Really, I can't think of too many places that DreamHack would go that I wouldn't be excited to go to. It'll be really exciting to see the different crowds. If you followed the Red Bull circuit at all, if you had a chance to go to multiple Red Bull events last year, I mean, there's just very different crowds. All good, but very different crowds if you go to Atlanta or Detroit or Washington, D.C. So I'm excited that the circuit is going to be coming to North America, and I hope they keep StarCraft in all of those games. I assume we'll be on Legacy of the Void by next year. So.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So that'll be exciting. Let's see. So we've talked about the WCS qualifiers. We've talked about the DreamHack Austin new maps. We're quickly running out of topics. This is going to be a short show. Tudming forfeits his spot at the S2SL, and they ended up just giving Rain the walkover to the round of 16. Tudming saying it was the MERS. Is that the disease going down?
Yeah.
And I mean, I was talking to someone from over there, and they said, they think it's kind of a shitty thing that was used as a reason, but because I guess it's under control, they've, isolated it. No one else is being infected. In fact, very few people were infected overall. But I imagine that Tudming, coming from China, there was the whole issue with, what was that? SARS? Was that the epidemic they had in China? And so I imagine that, he might have been just a little extra scared about it. Was like, I don't, because I mean, no one's going to fault him if he goes and plays and gets wrecked by Rain. So I don't imagine that was a consideration to him. It was like, I don't want to go fight him. It's going to be a waste of my time.
Yeah, I think a big part of it too is that like other Chinese organizations have also said, like in the StarCraft scene, I mean, they have also said that they're not willing to send any players. So I think that was like part of the reason for Rain's walkover too. Maybe they couldn't find anybody else from the Chinese scene to replace Tudming. But yeah, like you said, like it probably would have been like a 3-1 or 3-0 for Rain, but who knows, right? Like it's still a shitty situation, and it's understandable that Tudming would want to do that, especially if he's being pressured by either like his organization or maybe even like the Chinese government or something. I'm not sure. It's kind of like a closed community in terms of StarCraft, so I'm not sure what factors influence that decision from him.
Right. Yeah. So I mean, that's good for Rain. I mean, I expected Rain to have probably made it through that way anyway. Now, I just linked you guys in Skype this time the David Kim update from earlier this month. So let me change the title. So, I mean, first of all, it's excellent to see this kind of communication. Jeff, did you have a chance to sit with David and speak with him while you were at WCS?
Yeah, talked to him a bunch.
What's the vibe you're getting about, his thoughts on the future and what's gonna go on with their further communication with the community?
I didn't speak specifically to that, but I think all this positive feedback they're getting about their outreach and people's thankfulness for that is going to be mutually beneficial for both parties. I think that Blizzard sees that, and I think people see that, so it'll be good. But it's always interesting talking to David Kim. He's a great guy. He's very scientific about StarCraft. He's not like a super what's the best way to articulate this? Like, he's definitely passionate, but he's not like...
It's not emotional when he makes a decision or a thought.
Right, he doesn't fanboy about the game. He doesn't have, like, fluff and lore in mind. He's much, much more scientific and by the numbers about it, like, very interested in what will make the game more balanced and fun. He's been pulling a lot of pro gamers, Koreans and non-Koreans both. And I think going into Legacy of the Void, the vibe I got from him is that they're much more willing to take pretty big risks in terms of exciting changes that are much more aggressive than just little changes. I think they're pretty hip to the idea that you kind of go big or you go home a little bit with this, because this is going to be the final send-off of StarCraft for the foreseeable future. So those are the general feels I get from him.
Yeah. Kane, was this your first time getting a chance to speak with him?
No, I've spoken with him before. I've actually met him probably 4 or 5 times now.
Okay.
Just at WCS and stuff like that. But no, he's very he's very good at what he does, despite what people might say. Like, he has a very... It seems like he genuinely cares, and it seems like he has like a very defined process of how he makes these decisions. And like, he'll let you speak, and he won't shoot down your ideas. But in his mind, he might be saying like, fuck this, we're never going to put this in. But no, he's like, he'd be a good counselor. Like, he listens to what you say, and he responds accordingly. He'll tell you why that might not be like the direction that Blizzard wants to head in, or he'll tell you why the Blizzard made decisions that they did, like especially in terms of the map pool this season and stuff like that. So I think that he's very good at what he does, and despite all the community feedback and all the harsh criticism that he may get, I think he's a good person to do that job.
I agree. I definitely agree. I had the chance to interview him. It was pretty awesome. Now, obviously, it wasn't the time, the place, and I was very much made aware that there would be no room for any deviation from, what I decided that I wanted to talk about. But one thing we did talk about is I asked about the requirement for the engineering bay being put back before a Terran can build a turret. And so I'd like to ask Jeff and Kane, what he said was that he felt that it was stopping Protoss from doing a lot of early aggression, because he said one of the pillars of Legacy of the Void is going to be constant action. That's what they want. And he believed that Terran being able to get that turret out so quickly was taking away from that. And I'd like to get your opinion first, Jeff, as a Protoss. One of the things he was talking about was Dark Templar and Oracle. And I know that a lot of the higher up Terrans were actually enjoying the fact they didn't have to rush. They didn't have to worry like, oh, I missed the scout. And, it's just like, I can build a safety turret just because, and it's not going to require me to deviate too far from my tech path. So I guess from a Protoss player that plays a lot of the Legacy of the Void, what were your thoughts about it when it was in place? And I guess, do you think that it's something that should be revisited? Because he said that's still on the table, going back to it.
Going back to making it require an engineering bay?
To requiring a barracks, because now they require the engineering bay again.
Oh, I don't know. I think you'll get fairly racially biased answers from this, but for me, trying to detach from that, I feel like it is more interesting in StarCraft in general for you to be rewarded for either a good read or good intel, because that means you're playing to the game as opposed to just like, well, this is kind of a gimme, and it's just, generally a good thing to do, so I'll do it. That's in the game. That element will always be in the game, but if you increase the amount of occurrences where that happens, I feel like the game becomes more uninteresting. So I think 125 fairly fast building mineral engineering bay being required to make a missile turret is just a little bit of insulation between a good player and a lucky one or a bad one,
Hmm.
and I think that's completely fine. It's not like a 5 minute building, so it's not like they're like, well, I just couldn't get my engineering bay fast enough. No Terran ever says that. They always just say,
I missed
I
the
wasn't
scout.
expecting
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
I didn't see it. Or fuck that Protoss player. Like they get mad or something like that. But in general, they know not to make the silly excuse, which is like, well, who can afford 125 minerals anyways? It's like, no, you always could afford it. It doesn't take long to make, but you didn't because you didn't think you needed it, and then you were punished for that. And that's a quality in StarCraft that should be embraced, but also there shouldn't be too much of it. And that's where I think this strikes a nice chord, where it's like, if you do make that building, which is also, essential for upgrading bio and something that a lot of, most Terran players end up going towards anyway. So it's not like it's this out of the blue building that you'll never need ever again.
Yep.
That kind of sucks. It's an essential building that requires only minerals, is fairly inexpensive and fast to build, and it unlocks your defenses for your singular defense for basically all the early game harass that a Protoss has, except for Blink Stalkers, of course.
Right.
Which is also good, by the way, because if you do make a misread and you make 5 missile turrets, but you are facing a Blink Stalker all in, there's a very good chance you are at a severe disadvantage. And again, that's a good quality to StarCraft 2, where if you make a misread, you should be punished for that. And that's where I think a lot of people agree with that, I feel.
Kane, do you have any thoughts on that?
I really am not qualified to speak on that. I know nothing about like PvT or anything. So.
All right. Well, thank you, Jeff, for that. I mean, I see the logic behind what you're saying. I see the racial bias in my end and the frustration of, oh God, is it going to be DTs? Is it going to be oracles? Do I need to stop spending scans? But no, I very much agree with you. And
spending scans. Oh God,
that free energy.
If Protoss could spend energy to get a mule or to scan an area, think about that. That'd be incredible.
They have a
Think about how ridiculous that is, and then think about what it sounds like to a Protoss player. Like, oh, he forced me to scan. Oh God. Oh.
Well, yeah, I mean, I don't know. I'm thinking about the frustrating moments where it's like, all right, I see the DT, I saw the little whoosh, I got one scan, and he was just out of range, and he like still had enough health, and I can't do anything about it. I see him right there. I see him swiping, but I can't make him appear for another 20 seconds.
Early? You didn't have enough units?
Yep. That's all things that are the fault of a lesser player. But a greater player would not have made those mistakes. So, but no, I agree with your input on that. So let's jump now to what David Kim actually said in his update and discuss a lot of it. The Ghost, which is a unit that affects both of your races, Zerg and Protoss. They were discussing the different abilities, and one of the suggestions from the community was, like a line of sight skill shot, kind of like something you'd see in League of Legends. And they discussed it. They discussed why they don't like it. They don't want necessarily skill shots to be a thing. But one suggestion they've had is that they're talking about increasing the damage, getting rid of the drone, and it'll be a 5-second channeled spell before. So kind of like, a sniper's focusing in and then taking his shot. Jeff, any thoughts on that performance of the unit?
I'm sorry, I was laughing at someone in chat. What unit?
No worries. The unit, the Ghost, they were talking about, someone had suggested a skill shot. They would kind of like that idea, but we want to stay away from skill shots. And instead, they're talking about implementing a channeled ability. So it's the Ghost takes aim, 5 seconds later, it finally fires. But it does the high damage again.
Yeah. It sounds like snipe to me. Like, I think they want it to be something that gets around armor, like that they're a little bit afraid of the fact that I think it's 8 armor Ultralisk is going to be very strong against Terran in particular. I don't know. I understand them keying in on the Ghost to try to make that matchup a little bit more interesting. It's almost very specifically TVZ, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
All the abilities they're talking about, none of them sound super impactful on the TVP matchup, or even TVT for that matter. Especially TVT, actually. No. I mean, but you don't see Ghost in TVT.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm trying to. I always have like knee jerk, pretty strong responses. I'm trying to taper off of that and be a little bit more open minded. But ghosts are so expensive and such important units in either TVZ or TVP, especially since right now TVZ really doesn't incorporate ghosts. And if you infuse that cost into a TVZ, it's going to be very taxing on a Terran. But if that's their response to Ultralisk, that too is going to be tough. So it's like. I'm trying to imagine a world where like a ghost sits still and like, you know, and then it shoots a shot that hits an Ultras, like, and the Ultras they're just gonna move forward. So there's gonna be a lot of fights where like the ghosts get off that shot but then die. So is the shot so ridiculous that it takes off 75% of the Ultras health, or is it not that ridiculous and it takes off 25%? And then there's that problem. But this is the guy's calling for my car, so
Yeah,
you guys
go ahead. Kane.
Mm-hmm.
Lay it on me. What do you think about the snipe ability?
Okay. You want me to be completely honest?
Well, you're not part of a team. You're
Yeah.
semi-pro gamer. Lay it.
Okay. So, this is a bit of a sidetrack, but I was contacted to do the Red Bull Archon tournament like one day before.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd never played Legacy of the Void. I had literally never watched Legacy of the Void. I watched some of like the new unit previews that they do on YouTube once in a while.
So not literally.
So yeah, I've literally never touched Legacy of the Void, and so yeah, I saw a few Ultralisks actually in the Red Bull Archon tournament, but I didn't see any ghosts, and maybe that was just because either like there were so many mismatches, like really high level players going up against low level players, or maybe that they weren't useful. But either way, maybe this will make the ghost more useful. That's literally the best response I can give. Like, I don't know much about Legacy. I don't know much about how ghost and Ultralisk interactions work. So I wish that I could comment more, but unfortunately I can't.
Okay. Yeah, we'll have to see how it's done. But yeah, I see it being pretty problematic. Like, Terran's advantage in TVZ is to try and keep up with the mobility of Zerg and, like, you know, dropping constantly to keep them in check, and then, you know, not necessarily slow pushing, but meticulously fighting against creep and exchanging beneficially with the Zerg. Mm-hmm. That's been really exciting and fun. And then in the late game, they've had a real struggle with it because it's been such a, like, Ultralisk, or, you know, like, Broodlords falling on the Terran, and then the Terran's like, well, actually, what we'll do is we'll pick up our whole army in these medevacs, which now they can do with tanks as well, by the way. And we're just going to be wherever the army's not. It's made for fun games. It really has. And I think TVZ has been one of the best matchups throughout all of StarCraft and you know, StarCraft 2 as well.
Yep.
But balancing TVZ around the Ghost seems like a really tough job. Because Ghosts are, you know, they're really expensive. They come off a tech lab barracks, which Terran don't want anyways. And if they're facing Ultralists, they're going to be making Marauders to try and counter those Ultras as well. So now you're doubling up on what comes off those tech labbed barracks,
yep,
which also seems difficult. That being said, though, where would you balance it? You know, would you make the Raven more powerful against Zerg? I'd hope not, because that would be ridiculous. But you know, they've sped up Banshees. That would be cool. I would love to see people still making like 3 or 4 Banshees and harassing the fuck out of Zerg, especially, I mean, assuming they don't have air supremacy, and even if they do, we still see people making that work. Banshees have faster movement rates now, so that's pretty cool stuff. I think the matchup's gotten better, but I'm kind of holding out on severe opinion of the Ghosts, and you can hear the pessimism in my voice about it.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying, and I get it. It feels like a weird ability to have that just channeled snipe instead of the regular snipe. And it also felt weird that they took it out completely. When they put the drone in, they took snipe out entirely. And I thought, you know, that's still useful against Protoss. Some people like
I would just have options. I mean, why would you take it out? Why would you ever take it out?
Yeah.
You know, like, give them the drone and give them snipe. And if people are like, well, it's a little bit redundant, it's like, no, it's not really. One is long-range way of dealing with Ghosts, or Templar, excuse me, which is extremely important.
Mm-hmm.
You don't want to leave them with just EMP. That would not be a good way Like that would be a pretty bad thing. I'd be curious to see if they talked about that because that would be a pretty strong buff to Templar, and they're looking for a way to make Protoss better in Legacy of the Void because right now with the Colossus being completely non-existent,
This is true.
it is all about Templars and Disruptors. And if you buff the Templar a little bit, maybe that gives... That'll be so frustrating for Terran, but either way.
Yeah, that's one of my least favorite units to go up against. All right, so let's move on. There really aren't too many other units they talked about. One thing we did see a lot of at the Archon mode tournament is the drop mechanic on the Zergling, or I'm sorry, the Overlord drop. Kane, can you talk to us a little bit about that? We saw it used.
Yes, I can. Yes, I can. I actually thought that it was really cool. I didn't think that, I'd love to see like more of it. I don't think that Blizzard should patch it right away because I think it has potential to be really cool, and I think people haven't like played enough against it yet to really become accustomed to the different challenges that it kind of opens up. So I'd love to see it stay in the game and just not nerfed at all. Like people are saying that they want it to be a layer requirement and stuff like that, but I think that leaving it as hatchery could be really cool, and I'd love to see how that plays out. I know that even in Zerg versus Zerg, like people were lifting up Zerglings and Banelings and putting it into the main base while they attack the natural with Ling Bane. Like there are so many sick things that people were doing, and I'd love to see that stay in.
I agree. I think the matchup where you're going to see some problems is ZVT though. Like, and it's easily balanced. You don't have to make it layer, but maybe you make it a slightly slower build time or something like that. But a lot of the current Terran builds, and again, who knows if that's going to persist into the future? Maybe they have to change their builds. But like, way back in the day, I was doing in Brood War 1 base slow lurker drops. I would have 2 lurkers and I would drop them in the main, and it would happen so fast that there was very little they could do. That, of course, just like over time changed because Terrans went from being very 2 racks 1 base heavy to, CC first or 1 racks expand, much like we are here in StarCraft 2, and they would just have enough units to deal with that. But
were you a Zerg in Brood War?
That is correct. Yeah.
Did not know that.
So I don't know. We'll see. And obviously, I'm just speculating. Maybe the timing is completely okay, but like, there's going to be some funny 4 lurkers showing up and just wrecking a Terran because they went CC first on a 4-player map, and the Zerg took a pretty big gamble, but it's like a pretty safe gamble at the same time too. Just 25-25 at Hatch Tech and then a Roach Warren is not a huge investment given that you're running the risk of just flat out winning the game, I guess.
One thing that I kind of felt that it did in the game was it prevented Terran from gaining map vision. So the Terran's pumping out a few Hellions to get out there and do some work on the map to get coverage. And you're looking at these big maps like Iron Fortress or something like that, or Cactus Valley, and the Terran's out there doing its thing, and then all of a sudden here comes a drop of full overlord of Speedlings, and all the Terran has are like 1 or 2 Marines to deal with it. And I don't know, that's kind of the only negative I saw. It was exciting from the viewer's perspective, but I felt that, well, that makes Terran have to stick behind. They can't be out there gaining map presence with their Hellions because they got to sit behind and deal with a bunch of Speedlings. Is there a way to scout if that's about to come, Kane?
I'm sorry, I was watching something else. What was the question?
Is there a way to scout if the Speedling drop is coming other than seeing an Overlord on its way into your base?
Not really. Like, you kind of have to have stuff around your base to see it incoming. Like, it's kind of what Zergs have to do versus Terran, where you leave Overlords around the base. I think Protoss and Terran kind of have to adjust their builds accordingly, like kind of account for that possibility, because right now I think too many people are playing like Heart of the Swarm or Wings of Liberty and not really thinking of that even as a possibility. And then when it does come, they get totally surprised. So they'll just have to account for that and yeah, just keep like pylons or supply depots around the base and maybe scout around their base, even moving like 1 Marine and seeing if there's any Overlords like really close by that could be dropping.
Right. Okay. So then everything else is they talk about is a little nuanced. They talk about the Liberator a little bit. Terran Mech, they're trying to figure out how to balance Terran Mech, possibly making the weapon upgrade 1 upgrade but keeping the armor upgrade split, I believe is what they said.
Really?
But, yeah. So a lot of different things. going on. But the culmination of this is awesome communication from the development team, and I'm very excited to see that. I think a lot of other people are. Hi, Balloon.
What was that?
It's my roommate. So anyway, we're gonna go to a quick break. That was that was the gong that signals the break. When we return, we'll talk a little bit more about what's going on in the community. We'll rehash a little bit of Home Story Cup, and then we'll take your questions and wrap things up. So stay tuned. We'll be back with more Late Game.